So actually, you and I were talking before the camera started about incidents where a supervisor I had been talking to had, long story short, he had made some jokes. They were making some jokes about their football teams, and one of them said, shots fired, shots fired. And
yes.
someone came up to him afterwards and said, hey, you saying that made me feel a type of way because I grew up around gunshots. And so they asked him not to use that phrase. And so if we can go back into that, how do leaders, how do supervisors, how do they become super conscious of how they're communicating with those around them so they don't have those situations? And if they do have those situations, how should they work through those?
Well, I've been working on, over the past decade or more, on what some call an emerging practice, a trauma-informed approach, which has sort of morphed into a healing-centered approach whereby we understand the prevalence of trauma in our lives. We understand the triggers behind those things and what can trigger other people. We think about those universal triggers. That particular situation was a trigger for a person. Hearing shots fired may seem like an ordinary statement for someone, but on the other hand, someone could have had a personal experience around shots fired. I mean, including me, I've had that. And so I'm always thinking about that word shot or shooting or take that shot in basketball or in those, or in government, oftentimes we talk about, can you provide me with some bullet points?
Yes.
Well, the person who's asked for the bullet points may not be thinking that word that was just said could very well spark or trigger a traumatic reminder for someone who has gone through an experience. And so it's important to understand triggers. And experts say that there are three universal triggers: the sense or feeling of loss of control, as well as a power differential and the lack of predictability. And those three universal triggers we could group all of our individual triggers in one of those. I mean, think about it. When you get pulled over by a police officer and you're having, you really may not, appreciate police officers. Not that I love law enforcement, but I think there's a few bad apples in the bunch, and they have made it really bad for others. And so just think about it, you get pulled over, that's you've lost control over whether you can drive or not. You're being forced to actually pull over. And so that might trigger something. So again, understanding those triggers and understanding those triggers from the perspective of the person that we're engaging is a first step.
I like that answer. I think you and I also talked about the importance of then communication, right? Because I think on the other side, if you are in a situation where you've been, I guess, quote unquote, triggered or had something like that happen, triggered you, to not automatically think the person is doing it heinously. And to have that conversation, explain what's going on. Because if you don't have those conversations, then again, things either boil up till they blow up. Maybe that's a bad word, phrase to use. Or they never get solved and people start assuming bad things about the other person.
Well, again, I think that when we think about behavior and when we see behavior, all of that behavior has meaning. When we judge behavior, we miss the meaning. And so it's important to look at behavior as, look at ourselves as detectives of behavior. And if we see ourselves as detectives of behavior, quite often we won't be frustrated by someone else's behavior. And then I always, growing up as a teenager, I learned the saying that, God grant me the serenity, and many people may not believe in God, so you just kind of do a placeholder and say, grant whoever you want to grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, knowing the difference between what we can change and cannot change. That gives us some perspective on our approach. So if we know we can't change it, then we shouldn't be frustrated over being able to change it. If we know we can, then go for it. Just have the courage to do that, but just know the difference, okay? Because one of the things that we talk about in my field, violence prevention, trauma, mental health, is that that we just don't know what people have been through.
Yeah.
And so we respect their space and we respect, their backgrounds, even if we don't know who they are. Mm-hmm. And when individuals behave in a certain way, we shouldn't be so quick to make a judgment about that behavior, because we actually could be missing the meaning behind the behavior. And while meaning behind behavior gives us, some understanding and the explanation, I often say it's not an excuse for behavior.
Yeah.
Right. Judges see it all the time. They want to know what happened. At the same time, there's a consequence.
Yeah.
But one of the things I always say is that when we consequence behavior, especially when we see behavior and we immediately want to consequence it, even as supervisors or colleagues, we want to consequence people for their behavior. She didn't invite me out to lunch with everybody else, so I won't do this paperwork for her. Or this employee's late. One of my subordinates are late. The individuals who are directly reporting to me are late. But I actually issued them a written warning or a suspension for something without knowing what's actually going on.
Yeah. Hello everyone, this is Alex Tremble, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this content, please remember, click that subscribe button and click the like button. Those like buttons make it possible so that more and more people will be able to watch this content. And again, if you really enjoyed it, be sure to click that notification button so that YouTube will notify you every time new interviews and new content is shared. Also, if you know that you want to learn more about leadership, if you want to become a more influential person, and if you want to have really strong and strategic networking skills, then I strongly recommend that you read my book, Reaching Senior Leadership. You can find information about it below. And as always, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.